Welcome to the Red Booth Show. Tonight's guest is Lorena Manriquez, and she has a new documentary that she's just come out with and is also working on another one. So come and join us. All right, and here we have Lorena Manriquez.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you're here today because your story is extremely inspiring to me.
Thank you.
Yes, I just have to tell you guys, Lorena is a documentary filmmaker, and she was an engineer before this for most of her life. That was her career. And then she suddenly decided that she needed to make this documentary, and she has become a filmmaker after, I think you were 40, right? When you said you were
I
doing
turned
this?
40, and I guess that was my midlife experience. I won't say crisis because it was really a great thing for me. And just basically, I really enjoyed, the change. It's one of those things.
Well, obviously, I mean, being an engineer is like something that takes a lot of smarts, and then being able to take that and, put it to use as a documentary filmmaker, you already have like all of that going for you. You can figure it out how you're going to make it happen, and you didn't even go to film school or anything.
Nope, I didn't go to film school. Actually, I was really lucky that I got a lot of fellowships from different organizations that really helped me along and get to the point where I'm at now. There was the PBS and CPB Academy and the IFP in New York City, and NALIP, which is this organization for Latino independent producers. So I was very lucky to get through that, and it got me where I'm at right now.
That's so fantastic. Why don't you tell us a bit about the documentary that you have, the first one that you did. I know you're doing another one now, but the first one that you came out with and what it's about.
Okay, well, Ulisys Odyssey is a very personal documentary about my family in Chile. I grew up during the time of the dictatorship of Pinochet, and it was very disruptive to the country, obviously, and a lot of human rights violations happened, and a lot of repression. A lot of people didn't know really what was going on because we didn't have the internet back then in the 70s and early 80s. And so I moved to the United States for college, and that was mid-80s, and I decided to start finding out exactly what had happened back there, and I started to discover all sorts of things that I had no idea what was going on.
Right, and I remember reading something about this where you thought when you were a child that he was the greatest thing ever.
Right, I was raised with that idea that the dictator Pinochet was, had saved Chile and all of us from communism. But what we didn't know was all the other things that he also did. He basically went on a rampage, trying to eliminate all his enemies, or everybody that didn't really.
You mean like assassination?
Yeah, there was an assassination here in the United States, actually, in '76. Orlando Letelier, who used to be his Allende, the former president, the democratically elected president. His ambassador to Washington, to the United States in Washington. He was very much, he came here as an exile, and he pretty much, blew him up on Embassy Row in '76.
Blew him up?
Yep.
Like a car
bomb.
Car bomb.
Yep. And so it's really incredible that, in fact, that was the first case of state-sponsored terrorism in the U.S. And he actually blew up this Orlando Letelier and his colleague Ronnie Moffett. And there's a little, it happened in Sheridan Circle. There's a little memorial for the two of them in Sheridan Circle in Washington. So on top of that, he actually went to many other places. Including Rome. I think there was an assassination in Rome and Buenos Aires.
So obviously your documentary gets into all of this.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's also told through a personal story of a family. So, you know, you have the left side and then you have the right side. And I grew up, you know, in the household of, my father was an army officer and supported Pinochet. And then I had my uncle Ulisys, who was the leftist union organizer. So it's pretty much...
That's two complete opposites.
Yeah, and I'm the next generation trying to get the answers, you know, trying to find out what happened, really.
Wow. What was it like for you, you know, as a child living in Chile during that time period?
Well, I was 8 years old when the coup happened in '73. And for me, you know, it was normal to see the tanks and the soldiers with machine guns on the streets. You know, after growing up in that, it's like, oh, it's no big deal. Don't you know? I remember American friends would come and visit us in Chile during that time, and it was really, they were shocked to see that sort of thing, and for us it was just normal.
You're like, oh, this happens all the time.
Yeah, you know, and you would hear, you know, like sometimes there'd be like some kind of blast, some in the distance. You're like, oh, this is okay, you know, it's explosions, and yeah. Sometimes you would hear those things, especially around the time of the anniversary of the coup, which was September 11.
Really?
September 11. So a lot of people call it the other September 11. So yeah, I mean, it was bizarre, and of course, you know, we were told not to talk about any of this stuff because, you know, the secret police was out, and you know, you really, you know, couldn't really talk, and people couldn't gather, and there was no freedom of expression, no freedom of press. For many, many years. And so, you know, that was my youth.
That's I can't even imagine. You're one tough cookie, I think, having lived through all of that.
Well, I was one of many, you know, many people, and we pretty much, you know, the dictatorship ended in 89, 90 more or less, and you know, Chile is now back in a democracy, and the current president of Chile is Michelle Bachelet, who was a victim of exile, and she was tortured and all of that. And
she?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
We have a woman president.
Yes. That's so awesome.
And it's her second term.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really like Chile. I think I might have to go visit.
Yeah, you should. So
that's really cool. Well, okay, so the story that you had, you realized you needed to make a documentary about it. And how did you first go about starting the process and getting, like, you know, resources together to do this?
Well, I was a member of the Crossroads Film Festival in Jackson, Mississippi. I was in Mississippi at the time when I decided to become a filmmaker. And I, you know, had friends that made films, and one time one friend said, if you ever had to tell a story, what story would you tell? And I just came out of my mouth, I said, I'll tell Ulisys Odyssey. And she was like, wow, what a great name, what is that about? So I told her, and so basically we got in an airplane, and because she was pretty much, she did films for fun. She had another job, and we went off to Switzerland, where my uncle was in exile. So it all sort of started out of curiosity.
He's in exile?
He was in exile at the time. Wow. in Switzerland. So wow. Yeah, he was in exile for like 30 plus years. So we started filming, and bottom line, I just, you know, when I came back, I had all this footage, and I didn't really have anyone that was bilingual that could understand, you know, and cut it. And so I just bought a book called Final Cut for Dummies. And I got some small funding from the state of Mississippi and the city, and they were great, and bought my equipment and started editing. Wow. And from, you know, learning from this book. So pretty much, I mean, I self-funded the film. It took me 10 years to make. It was definitely a work of love, and yeah, so.
Wow.
finally finished. Long process. A lot of people helped me along the way, obviously. So.
And did you say PBS was part of the funding as well?
No, PBS did not fund that documentary. It actually, it was pretty much, Ulisys Odyssey was pretty much funded by myself, basically my family, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I switched careers and I decided to make a movie.
Hey,
and,
you've got to do it.
Yeah. And but my next film, thanks to Ulisys Odyssey, my next film, pretty much got funding from the very beginning.
That's the one that PBS is helping with,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, this is my next film. It's called Siqueiros, Walls of Passion. It's a story about David Alfaro Siqueiros, who was a Mexican muralist who painted murals here in Los Angeles in the 1930s. Very controversial political muralist, and he very much inspired the Chicano muralists in the city, and many other groups. African Americans started painting in the 60s and 70s, and his legacy pretty much expands everywhere in the U.S. And not only him, but there were three great Mexican muralists, including Diego Rivera, who everybody knows. He was married to Frida Kahlo, and then Jose Clemente Orozco, who painted murals also here. And then there was Siqueiros, and Siqueiros was the most radical of all. Super, into politics and communism at the time. And he attempted to kill Trotsky when he was in Mexico.
What?
Yeah, and so anyway,
he's not just a painter.
No. I mean, for him, art and politics were one. It was. He actually said that art was a political weapon. That was his mentality. And so when he came to the U.S., he was given a commission to paint a mural in Olvera Street, and they gave him the theme America Tropical, Tropical America. So they expected, Olvera Street is all this quaint little artifacts from Mexico, and the people singing the music, and the mariachis, and everybody is very happy. And so, he painted instead, the night before the opening, he painted the central figure, and which is a crucified indigenous man, crucified, and then the American U.S. eagle above it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like the imperialism, all over Latin America. So he was really out there. He was a great character. And so making a documentary biography of him and his art for PBS.
That's what you're working on now.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How did you get to work with PBS or like these other groups that are helping, with funding? Because I know it's not just PBS, right?
No, actually, it's funny because when I made my first movie, I as being an independent, you pretty much have to write all these proposals, and you have to ask for, for funds and
help.
And it takes a lot. It just really a lot of perseverance and a lot of proposal writing and a lot of rejection. I mean, I was rejected I can't even remember, but if I count just with the ITVS funding, which is for PBS programs, it's like 8 times with my first film, and then 3 times with my current film. So that if you send a proposal every 6 months, that's like years until I actually got it. So with my Siqueiros project, I pretty much got funding from this organization called California Council for the Humanities in San Francisco, and it's really competitive, but they were the first ones to believe in my work, and they had seen my first film, and they're like, oh my gosh, and so they came in first.
Well,
so
that reminds me, I would really like to play a clip from your first movie. Mm-hmm. So what do you think would be the best portion of the documentary? I
think the portion of when we're sitting down at the table, and there's my father and my uncle talking about the past, meaning the dictatorship, and my father saying, forget about it, move on. And my uncle saying, how can you expect me to forget about it after all that we went through? And so then I go into, and so that's sort of, the whole thing about Chile. It's like certain people that just want to forget, and some people that cannot forget. And, it's about this collective memory of, of what happened.
Wow. Well, let's put a clip of that right here.
Salud. 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 Y por Chile. Y por Chile, mi hermosa patria.
Por las fiestas patrias. Salud.
Si usted dijo cómo se siente en Chile.
Terminó mi periodo de errar y de ser fugitivo. O sea, ya no soy...
Eso.
No me puedo olvidar. ¿Cómo puedes olvidar tú? ¿Tú crees que es posible olvidar cuando se han vivido cosas así? No es posible.
Si es negativo lo que ha pasado, olvídese de lo negativo.
And then we go over, it's that scene at the table with the two of them, and then we go into Villa Grimaldi, which is this sort of concentration camp, or, the place where it was one of the most infamous detention centers. I talk about all the...
They had like concentration camps going on there?
Well, they called them detention centers, but it was, pretty intense.
A lot of people were killed?
3,000 people, and many people were tortured, and many others had to go to exile, and but there's a record that slightly over 3,000 people were killed during this time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's amazing that you're sharing this story with everybody, and people should learn more about what's been happening all over the place in Chile and what happened with him. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
For your interest in the story. So appreciate it.
Well, also in you as a filmmaker, it's inspiring that you decided to go and tell this story, and you just kept going and made it, and you made it happen. Even though that's not your background or that's not what you had been doing for most of your life. So that's really cool. You can always start, guys, anytime.
Yeah, if you just have this story, everybody has a story to tell. I think that's really, whether it's something about your childhood or about whatever it is, there's always a way to tell it, I think. So that's what I did. I had to tell it. I felt like, I don't know, it's just crazy passion of having to tell the story. So here I am.
Well, that's wonderful. And I look forward to the new documentary that you're working on now. And when do you think it's going to be out?
That documentary is going to be probably ready by the end of this year.
Okay.
Probably broadcasting next year on
That's
PBS.
Right. Because they have a 6-month delay or something, like you turn it in and then they air it 6 months later, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
So it's about, so.
Is it tough working with that? Like the proposals and stuff, is it really intricate or?
Yes, but after you've done so many and gotten so many rejections, then I guess you get better and better at it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot. It takes a lot of
trial and error.
Yeah, trial and error, and no ego, and you just have to get up again and do it all over again, and that's what it takes.
I'm really interested in this because obviously there's this whole public, broadcasting network that people can actually use if they have stories to tell, and that is a great way to get funding because funding is the hardest thing to get, obviously. So what advice do you have for other people who might want to go the same route?
I'd say just network and find people that are just as passionate about a certain subject as you are. And I had to ask a lot of help from friends, and I had to pretty much have to get out there and just write and rewrite. And the good thing about some of these funders is that even though if you don't get it, they give you feedback, and so
that's good.
Yeah, some of them do. So you get that phone call, and then You know, of course, you want to be polite, but ultimately you want to find out what it is that, you know, sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes you agree, sometimes you don't agree. But bottom line, it's just you just keep learning and trying it again and trying it again, and just don't give up. Just do it and don't give up. But bottom line, you know, in my experience, it was like I made my first film and I got it done, and then what you do is, you know, you just try your next one and hopefully you'll get funding. And in my case, I did, but it wasn't on the first trial. You know, it just takes several trials to get there. Yeah.
Well, good for you for persisting and, you know, keeping it going all this time. You know, I know.
Thank you.
The first one that you made took 10 years, so that's quite a lot of determination to not give up.
Yeah. So that's bottom line. Don't give up and just do it.
I like it.
There's another film that I didn't direct. It's about Latinos in media and how we're misrepresented. But I'm a co-producer. I'm not really, you know, and how there's a need of having more Latinos.
Well, did you know that the TV station that my show is on mostly has Latino programming? So
Right.
every day, every week when I go down to the TV station, it's pretty much a Latino station.
Oh, that's great.
So I'm one of the only.
Great.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm the gringo on the station.
Gringa.
Oh, gringa.
Gringa.
Okay, you're right. But also, I learned some Spanish too.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think. Is it much different the language in Chile? It's not, right?
It's the same language, but you know the slang is different.
Mm.
It's different, you know, slang and the accent. It's
accent.
like, you know, different accents, but you could understand definitely if they speak slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you went to Mississippi
Yep.
from Chile.
No, I've been all over the place. I came to the U.S. For college, and I met my husband, and you know I've been here ever since. We were college sweethearts, and
Aw.
yeah, and so we pretty much, you know, after in Virginia, we actually went to college in Virginia, and then we moved to California, and then Mississippi, and then back to California. So happy to be back.
This is definitely a good place to be for independent film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, like you said, friends helping friends, which
Yeah.
is how I've been able to keep my show going. Thanks, guys.
Yes. Yes,
Anyways.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big thing, you know. But there's also, you know, when you actually apply for these grants, and especially if they're California grants, you know, you're competing with the best. You're competing with the very best filmmakers in the country, pretty
That's
much.
true, yeah.
There's New York, but LA. So, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Do you know, I've been looking into it recently because I've heard that there's a lot of grants for filmmaking as well, but you just have to kind of really search them out. Do you know of
Yes.
any other resources like that you could share with us?
Yeah, well, you know, for PBS, there's also the Minority Consortia, and so you know you can get funding from ITVS, which is, you know, the big for everybody place to get the most of the funding actually.
How much money did you get funded from them? Are you allowed to say?
I don't know if I can say that, but
Okay.
a lot.
All
That it was at least over 50% of my budget. And then I got, you know, and then there's Latino Public Broadcasting, which is, you know, part of that Minority Consortia, and they have, you know, a consortia for the African Americans and for the Native Americans and the Asian Americans and all that. So
ITV.
no, this is Minority Consortia. So this is, if in my case, I got funding from the Latino Public Broadcasting, which also came in with a big chunk. And then California Council for the Humanities, now called Cal Humanities, and they were they pretty much you know, came in first. And then there's Firelight Media, which is pretty much a fund if you're a member of their lab. So, you know, and they're out of New York City, documentary filmmakers out of New York City.
What is it called again?
Firelight Media.
So they're mostly documentaries?
Yeah.
Can anybody go to them for projects or?
I think they pretty much do, they fund producers of color, But otherwise, you know, if it's a documentary about a subject that they like, yes. And of course there's Sundance, but Sundance, you know, has to be a social justice kind of theme. And
they'll fund your documentary?
Yeah, they have a fund. Yes, Sundance Fund, documentary fund. Yes. And, you know, there's all sorts of other foundations. There's the Ford Foundation and MacArthur Foundation, and, you know, of course all those are really hard to get, but yeah, there's a lot of other resources.
What do you think you have to get them to say yes? Like, what's the basic thing you have to have?
You have to have a really good story. It all boils down to the story. You know, if you have a really good character, if you have a good story that has a beginning, middle, and end, that's what they look for. They look for, you know, they like the 3-act structure. You know, no matter what it is. If it's a documentary, they want to see a story arc. They want to see, you know, that you know what you're doing. That, you know, if you have a budget, you know, they want to make sure that the budget makes sense. They want to make sure that the budget, you know, that you add up the numbers correctly. That you actually have a budget that is reasonable, that is realistic, you know. And so it's all these things, of course, and then there's your team. Because you can be a great filmmaker, but if you don't have a team and people that really can help you make it, you know, I think they want to see at least a couple of other people that, especially if you're an emerging filmmaker, they want to see someone that is backing you up, that has the experience to make a good film.
Okay, so you put together a good budget, you put together your crew list,
yeah,
and all of their sort of like, it's almost like a business plan, I guess. You would have like everybody, the executive summary of everybody that's in it, and your budget, and then go and
then
pitch.
your treatment. You have to have a treatment that makes sense, and like I said, a really good story.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for. And then of course, if you have footage, they want to see a 10-minute clip, you know, something that you've already put together.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well,
so
that's great advice.
Yeah.
I hope you all go out there and start pitching and get some documentaries going.
Yes, make your own movie.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, it's so cool. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me so very much.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining Lorena Manriquez on
The Red Booth.